Umbrella.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, a bigger one if you want it.
No, if we need this, we'll use it over the camera. It's only really over for the camera.
We need to protect the camera, and this will do it.
This is the perfect. This is Gwen's umbrella.
Yeah.
Oh.
My little ladybug umbrella.
I thought it would be like, yeah, this is for my grandkids.
No.
It's for me.
It's for me.
Don't lose her umbrella. That would be the worst thing in the world.
Right here.
I love your little shade garden and everything. It's so adorable. It's like a little nymph wonderland back here.
It's wilderness encroaching on us always.
This is amazing. That basically opens up to your backyard, a bog. Bob Beck's bog walk. All this alliteration in the backwoods.
Well, we're surrounded. The preserve here, which was open to the public in 2001, it was actually established with the acquisition of properties around us here in 1997. And so we're surrounded by 308 acres of protected property on all sides. So we really like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, let's go and see. And we could maybe even demystify the difference between bogs and fens too. I think most people have never experienced them in their life. Well, I see you have a little, is that a little vinca?
Yeah, we've got
encroachment?
vinca that was planted here, previous owners, and it's spreading down the hill where it shouldn't be. This is my dream house from when I was a kid, or growing up, and then discovered that when I was at Cornell, the geological and biological features nearby, near where I grew up.
Yeah.
As a biologist, became my dream of if I could ever live here.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And when I came back from New York City, met my wife, we got married, and a few years later, this place became available.
No.
And we grabbed it real quick.
Yeah.
We bought, at that time, 38 acres, including a good portion of the wetlands and the bog and rare plants and so forth. So when we fought the gravel mine for 11 years with the help of scientists, Cornell people, Barbara Bedford, Robert Wesley, and others, and the Nature Conservancy. 11 years later, in 1997, we were successful in stopping proposed gravel mine plans on the other side of the wetland. The Nature Conservancy was able to buy the entire gravel mine piece, 109 acres.
Wow.
And then acquired some additional pieces around us. And we donated most of our land, 35 of our 38 acres, to be the core of this new preserve, which now was becoming a reality. And so we kept just enough for our house and driveway, right? Knowing that we could always enjoy it, just as we had, but it would be now permanently protected by the Nature Conservancy. Their office is in Rochester. This place is a combination, we'll talk more, I think, if you want to hear, of geology and biology.
Yeah.
It's a combination of fascinating things having to do with both. What the glacier did here 12,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago, when it was melting back and huge amounts of water were coming off, creating landforms that it left behind. Eskers and Kames, and then the Kettles, where giant blocks of ice were left behind and melted, leaving these round holes that became wetlands, acid bogs, which we'll see here in a minute.
Oftentimes when we say acid bogs, people may not know what that means, but are you referring to the pH of the...
Yeah, the pH, bogs are more acidic than more ordinary wetlands, and in contrast to fens, which are more alkaline. So we have both here, and transition between them from alkaline to acid. So and different kinds of plants live in each. And they're uncommon compared to more typical wetlands like marshes and many kinds of swamps. But we also have different kinds of swamps here in the preserve, one of which is the less common mineral-rich hemlock hardwood swamp, which is more alkaline than typical. And if we can stop here, we're at the one end of the loop, eastern loop. A little bridge over here that goes around the loop that way. If we turn left here, we'll go the acid bog. We can look into a fen over here. If we do that.
Yeah, let's take a look into a fen. And,
Okay.
And then, bog and a fen, bog bog, is it precipitation?
Yeah, good.
And fen is a groundwater?
Good point.
Okay.
Good point. Most acid bogs do not have a source of water from outside. It's primarily rainwater that supplies the water to that kind of wetland, and I think it's the vegetation primarily that causes the increase in acidity. So there's certain kind of plants grow there and not in other places, including pitcher plants that we'll see a little bit later. Fens, on the other hand, are located in places where there's groundwater coming out from higher ground, seeping out, that's very alkaline and mineral rich.
Right.
And the groundwater is moving through these wet places, creating a fragile but very, very species-rich environment called fens. And I understand, I'm not a botanist, but there's more species of plant, greater diversity in fens than any other habitat. More species than other places here in this part of the world, not as many as in the tropics, of course. But fens are very fragile because many times they're small, and disruption in the supply of water or trampling by cattle or other things or pollution can mess up fens very easily.
Right. And I'm when we think about growing plants, whether it's in our backyard or vegetable beds, oftentimes, people are always trying to get their pH just right, just around neutral, because it inhibits taking up certain nutrients, for instance. But here we're talking about bogs, which are highly acidic, and fens, which are more unalkaline. And then you have this really unique grouping of plants that come with it. You would think that, it just seems counterintuitive.
That's interesting. I'm not a person who tries to grow my own plants so much as my wife, but I certainly haven't dabbled in trying to create a fen or a bog around my house, for example.
So you're trying to recreate, even though you have all this, you still want to recreate a little bog or fen around the house.
But we've got them right here, so right here just to enjoy anytime.
Yeah.
So we have other kinds of plantings right near the house.
Well, I shouldn't laugh because we do have an overflow area, and I was just sharing with Sonder and our other partner Joey. I was like, I'd love to create like a little bog, like get some Sarracenia in there and everything like that.
Yeah.
Although it'll be hard to possibly recreate what we have here. Which is amazing.
It's a challenge because I think it typically doesn't work very well. I want to just point out while we're right here, at a branch in the trails, we're sort of between the two loops, and straight ahead up the hill,
almost looks like a logging road,
past this big white pine
Wow.
here. The trees are growing and will become old-growth forest at some point. We're happy they're protected and won't be cut. We're going to walk up the top of this small ridge here. It's a small esker, which was left by water in a tunnel in the melting glacier, leaving a riverbed or stream bed over probably many decades and gradually accumulating in the bottom of a tunnel or possibly under a glacier.
Yeah.
And so this is a small esker compared to a large esker on the preserve here that's over 1 mile long.
Wow. It's so fascinating to be able to just, see this mound in the landscape and just, be able to tell a little bit of history from it. Because it almost looks fake, it looks like it was man-made, you just pushed it up and had a logging trail.
It
right
does.
In the middle.
It doesn't look like it's a natural thing.
Yeah.
It was Cornell geologists, especially Professor von Engeln, long gone now, who's the preserve is named for, O.D. von Engeln, who was a geologist at Cornell and brought his students here on a train from the East Ithaca station when trains were still running in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And came here on the train to hike around the Esker and study the Kames and Kettles, and then hailed another train at the little dirt road, West Malloryville Road, to head back to Ithaca in the afternoon.
And then little, I think these are star flowers, right?
That is starflower,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. It's, I know people can't feel this like through the video, but it's like this refreshing dampness. It's very cool today. It's just, it just feels incredibly refreshing right now.
It is.
Is this
It
a little trillium?
Painted trillium.
Painted trillium.
They're past bloom, but this
Nice.
place on this small Esker, which we call Hemlock Ridge,
Yeah.
because it's lots of hemlock trees all around us, lots of shade. We're walking on hemlock needles, soft under our feet.
So soft.
The painted trillium really like this spot. Maybe it's a bit more acidic, and they're beautiful. They, of course, they're different from the white trilliums and the reds that we have and are more abundant, but these just love this place and are beautiful in April, early May when they're in bloom.
Yeah, really important observations, I guess, just to see the microclimates and the geolocalities of the different plants.
Yep, they all have their places that they prefer. So I should mention here, this ridge, this small ridge, is really dividing between mineral-rich to the west, and we're looking down at a mineral-rich hemlock hardwood swamp. And to the other side, to the east, it looks very similar, but it's a mineral-poor hemlock hardwood swamp, so, and more acid. So that surrounds, that swamp to the east surrounds the acid bog that we'll see in a little while.
Okay.
But it seems like the mineral-rich groundwater is coming from the west, north, and west. The higher ground out of sight from here, feeding the mineral-rich swamp and the fens on that side. And then further away from that source of groundwater and more fed by rainwater is the mineral-poor swamp and the acid bog. So this area ahead of us where it's more open is more of a typical marsh that has cattails and Joe Pye weed and things that are more common. And then further into the swamp, you have less common things like, for example, the yellow lady slippers
Right.
that are past bloom now, and other plants that really like the more alkaline. Even though the trees look the same, there's lots of hemlocks, there's lots of red maples, there's a yellow birch that likes the wetter areas.
I'd imagine, though, even though these trees are quite small in diameter, just with the, I guess, the marshy conditions, they might actually be a lot older than what they led on to.
That may well be. That may well be. So I should point out we have just come to the junction with the big Esker.
Yeah.
So this is the Malloryville Esker
Oh, wow.
that Professor von Engeln liked
Yeah.
so much. And it's steep sides on both sides and is at least a mile long, winding around. I want to point out this little corner of wetland here
Yeah.
in our mineral-poor swamp. This corner is a favorite place for wood frogs that live in the woods through the year in the winters, buried under leaves and logs and stuff. And they come out late March and early April to the wetlands where the ice has just melted. So there's the first open water in the spring. And this is a vernal pool where it mostly dries up in the summer.
How did this habitat respond to the drought that we had this last summer?
It definitely is drier.
Yeah.
And I believe, I hope that the tadpoles from the wood frogs and, of course, their salamanders like the spotted, the black and yellow spotted salamander and the Jefferson salamander, the big ones that get up to 8 inches long, who also live here. One would hope that their young tadpoles of the frogs and the young salamanders could grow enough and get out of the wet,
Yeah.
back into the woods where they live before it dries up.
Right.
And so in a real dry year, it could be they might not make it in time.
Right. Now, I just want to point this up with like when a tree falls in the woods, and this is like a great example. You could see that where the root ball was, it's
Yep.
pooling up in one of those like vernal pools, which is
Yep.
an important place for amphibians, and that's how you get these like pits and mounds in the forest.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Here, big strong windstorms tip over trees. They have shallow roots here in the swamp, the edge of the swamp, and they tip over fairly easily. And sometimes I'm amazed that there are any trees left.
I know. I mean, it's really striking because when something like this happens, we often think that like most trees will do like a giant taproot or whatever. But as you're saying, most of them are just within, a few, 6 inches, if not a little bit more in the soil, and they're just spread out.
They don't need to go deep for water.
Yep.
But they do risk toppling over when the wind comes.
Yeah.
So the tangle of moss covered and other vegetation on the roots in the wetlands here, I think it's really fascinating. There's mosses and liverworts.
So how does the Nature Conservancy and friends of this area manage any type of invasives? Like we saw some of the vinca coming through. Is there anything else that needs to be addressed?
We do have honeysuckle that's invasive and ought to be pulled more frequently as it's encroaching on wetlands in some places. There's the mustard, what's it called?
Garlic mustard.
Garlic
Allium,
mustard.
yeah. Oh.
Yeah, and we've got plants here, interesting wetland plants. This is, it's a lily.
It's a lily, okay.
Yep.
Blue bead lilies?
Well, there's another name.
Clintonia borealis.
Clintonia.
Yeah.
Thank you. There are places where it grows abundantly, like right here. Nice, smooth, flat leaf, which sometimes is confusing with the moccasin flower, pink lady slipper orchid.
I was going to say, it almost looks like an orchid leaf. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's cool.
But moccasin flower leaves are more fuzzy surface and a little bit different look to them, but about the same shape.
And are these the cinnamon ferns actually growing throughout?
Cinnamon ferns all around us here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun to watch them unfurling a little bit earlier in the season, slowly becoming a forest of cinnamon ferns.
Oh, and look at this tree that it looks almost like a little cubby hole,
It does, like a bear den or something, but it's wet under.
Yeah.
This is recent. This one has just tipped up in the last few weeks.
Oh, wow.
It just pulled up its roots and uncovered a wet area underneath.
Even on a hot day, I bet you'd come down here and it's just like 10 to 15 degrees cooler.
It is, until you get into the boardwalk, which we'll see in a minute, of the opening at the bog where it can be very hot.
I mean, look at the moss too. It's insane. It's so thick.
This moss wants to take over the boardwalk here. And I was here leading a trip for Nature Conservancy not long ago, and I asked the question. Some of the staff from the Rochester office were here, and I said, and they, of course, built the boardwalk using Trex, by the way. This is a Trex decking material that was donated for the cause.
And what is Trex lumber? Is it just like a special kind of lumber?
It's a composite material manufactured from mixing of wood fibers, ground up wood, and plastic grocery bags.
Oh. So it's going to last.
So it's supposed to last.
Yeah.
It's all mixed together and sealed up. And the boards we got in 12-foot lengths, and we cut them to the lengths we needed and wheeled them down to different places in wheelbarrows. So we had a bunch of volunteers putting the boardwalks together and the little footbridges. And we found, in fact, that the Trex, it's eventually going to need replacing.
Yeah.
But it lasts longer, considerably longer than pressure-treated wood.
Yeah.
And it doesn't release toxic chemicals into the wetlands.
Right.
So.
And then, are we seeing blueberries here?
Yes, these are tall bush blueberries.
And then what is this? Is this something?
And this
kind of disease on it?
I believe that doesn't seem to really hinder the bushes from producing
Clearly not,
blueberries.
because look at the blueberries are starting.
But over the last 20 years or so,
Yeah.
there's just increasing amounts of this stuff. We call it witch's broom.
Witch's broom, yeah.
Yeah. We wish we could get rid of it because it just is increasing on the blueberries.
Although sometimes people cultivate plants that have the witch's broom, especially conifers and things like that,
Yeah.
they're smaller and more compact. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see it on blueberries. That's my first time seeing it on blueberries, and I'm seeing it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's really too common here.
So do you have both the high bush and the low bush blueberries?
Oh, just the high bush here.
Okay.
If we turn left, take this juncture here
Yeah.
Into the acid bog over here. So lots of high bush blueberries here on the side.
Oh wait, there are some right here.
Blue,
Yeah, they're blue.
Out in the sunlight more.
Yeah.
So this needs some trimming here because it's totally overgrowing our boardwalk.
I don't know how good they are.
They're pretty small. Go ahead, try.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably a little sour.
Not that bad,
Yeah.
Sander.
Yeah.
It has a little tail on it. Not as super sweet like near my dad's house.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we're on a platform looking into the bog.
Oh, look at this. Oh, and look at the
pitcher plants.
pitcher plants. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
The flowers are just.
The flowers have dropped their petals.
Yeah.
A little earlier this month, they were in full bloom with the maroon petals wrapping around the green structure in the middle of the flower. Don't see any still on.
There's somebody threw a Powerade bottle in there,
Oh,
and I'm
gosh.
like,
I usually get out there
yeah.
and pick things up. It's not common, but occasionally.
Should I sneak in there and get it?
I can get it later.
Oh, Sander wants to go get it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice, but you might sink in over your shoes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good.
Yeah. Helps to have long legs. We got the bottle.
So if you stand on that, you will sink in.
There are places where it's wetter and places you can walk quite easily, sinking in a little bit, and it might be very wet. You might sink in way over your boots or shoes.
It's really hard to see, but there's some pink flowers in the distance. Do you see them? There's 3 or 4 of them.
Yes, and let me see if it
see,
might.
now he's getting his binoculars
Wonderful.
out.
So that's good spotting. Thank you, Summer. Those are the first of the bog pinks, the grass pinks, they're called. It's an orchid. It's the Calipogon grass pink orchid, which there will be hundreds of them here,
Wow.
especially around the edge of the open area. Now, this
Yeah.
is not, this is maybe a more advanced bog. I'm guessing that many, many years ago, hundreds of years ago, there was open water here, and the bog mat was forming around the edges of the open water, slowly encroaching. It's now totally covered. There's no open water here. It's all covered with sphagnum moss and leather leaf that makes a tangle of roots and stems that makes some more structure to the mat. And then sedges have come in. The pitcher plants are pretty much everywhere, but especially around the edges. And in the next few weeks, there's going to be lots of these grass pink orchids showing up.
Well, I just remember when we went and we did a soil core of the bog, and we went and one of our TAs was kind of egging us on, and we put soil core on top of soil core on top of soil core until there was like 20 soil cores, and we're just like sticking it down, and then we couldn't get to the bottom of the bog.
Yeah.
And then we pulled it out, and then Barbara reprimanded us because she's like, you could lose the soil cores down there.
You'll never get it back.
And never get it back. But we kept on putting the soil cores on top, and we're like, how far does this actually go down? So when you describe, these mats like just sitting on top of the water or like taking up some of the water, I mean, it could go for forever.
Well,
seemingly.
We wondered here, and Don Siegel,
Yeah.
professor at Syracuse University, and his students came here. I was with them one Saturday, as I recall, back in the early 90s, and with a core sampling device, right? This tripod apparatus
Yeah.
and some threaded pipe. And we went down until we ran out of threaded pipe because we didn't know how deep it would be.
Yeah.
So I got on the phone, no cell phones then, and ran up to my house and called hardware store.
For backup.
For backup. And the owner was very kind and found time to give us more threaded pipe. We came back here and went deeper until we came to the gravel bottom.
You hit the bottom.
We did.
Oh my gosh, but how deep was
And
it?
it was something over 30 feet.
Wow.
31 feet or so.
Wow.
And they used the results of that core samples and the study of the samples in the paper that was published in 92 in the Journal of Hydrology, I think. But it was really interesting because they sent samples off to somewhere in Florida for radiocarbon dating. And so we got back results so you could see how old the different layers were.
Yeah.
And I think it went back, the important thing was the transition from fen to bog, which earlier on with the groundwater feeding and the groundwater coming up to the surface back then when the vegetation was much lower here, and this is a kettle. We're standing above a glacial kettle, right? So earlier the groundwater was the source of water for the vegetation, and it was a fen with fen vegetation. And then as it got higher, grew higher and higher, it transitioned to bog. And apparently that date was about 4,100 years ago.
Oh my God. Well, it just goes to show you like how long it actually takes to build up all that, that peat and sphagnum and stuff like that. So yeah.
And so it's interesting seeing the different materials as they were taking out these samples.
Yeah.
And sometimes intact, partially decayed, but still visible leaves and things from plants that had grown thousands of years ago.
Now, if we fast forward many, 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 many years beyond, is this really how like coal starts basically? Is this like the precursors of coal?
Yeah.
Pressure and time and.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Although there were massive, hundreds and thousands of miles of coal forests. What was the kinds of trees that were growing back then, different from what we have now.
Very different, yeah.
That just left these huge deposits.
Right, in the Carboniferous era.
Carboniferous era, 400 million years ago or so.
I'm from Pennsylvania, so we have a lot of those.
Yes. That made coal and then oil and petroleum.
And
let me just mention this plaque right here.
Oh, yeah, because I see that somebody shares your last name here.
Yes. Just mention this. This was my dad's sister, who was born in 1899. And she was a wonderful lady, and she loved the wild plants and the flowers and the birds, and was really influential on us kids as we were growing up, my brothers and I. And other cousins. But we called her Aunt Floss, Florence Beck. And she, in an essay when she was in school as a teenager, wrote an essay just thinking that if she did live past 2000 or into the year 2000, she would have breathed the air of 3 centuries. So she wrote this in her essay, if I live to be 100, I will have breathed the air of 3 centuries. And she did.
Yeah.
She made it.
God bless her.
Yeah, she was really a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a nice little memory, especially on like an outlook like this,
So here in the middle, we weren't sure if these plants would survive, in the middle of this opening in the platform, and they did. Unfortunately, these are black chokeberries here.
Yeah.
Mostly that probably should be cut back so that the pitcher plants down below
I see the pitcher plants. Sonic, do you see them?
Get more sunlight.
Is this the leather leaf or what is this?
Yes, there is leather leaf.
Yep.
And there is bog rosemary. This is leather leaf right here,
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
And this is chokeberry. So
That's chokeberry. Okay.
yeah, it's got very fine serrations on the edge.
I see.
And the leather leaf is smooth. And then the bog rosemary is the narrow leaves.
Does it have a rosemary?
It may have a scent. I'm not sure. I don't have
love
really.
the white on the bottom of the leaves.
But it's not related to the herb rosemary,
Okay.
as I understand it. These were in bloom 2 or more months ago.
Yeah.
Little bell-like flowers.
And so you think you should cut back
Well,
this chokeberry and then let the
I am thinking it would be a good
Yeah.
thing to do. Are there any of the maroon petals left? 'Cause I
sepals
guess-
are maroon, right?
Yeah,
I don't think
but
the
the petals themselves are a prettier maroon that
Yeah.
wraps around that green stalked thing in the middle. And those petals fall off pretty quickly. So it's an unusual flower.
Any
Strange.
other rare carnivorous plants here? Like I know we have native utricularias, but I've never seen them.
They do live here.
They do live here.
There are those little critters. I don't know much about
Yeah.
those plants.
Because I think
that-
all of them are like endangered, basically. So
They,
to have
they're
that here.
They are here for
Yeah.
sure. You need a
A lens, a hand lens.
to really see them.
Yeah. I don't know
and
if you
there's
remember,
some-
but
and there's
Sander,
some-
the utricularia is something that we saw in Thailand that were growing off the edges of the rocks, and they were just surviving on the little bits of water that was running down the side of the rock.
Yeah.
And they were very tiny plants, and they were only endemic to that like one rock.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's that kind of stuff that
Yeah.
you could probably find here
Yeah.
with the appropriate.
Well,
like,
there are sundews here,
Yeah.
the roundleaf sundews.
the Droceras.
Yeah, and of course they trap insects too, and their sticky ends of
Yeah.
their little leaves, the little tentacles on the leaves. And interesting, I always thought that they were more in acid bogs,
Mm-hmm.
but where you find them here is on hummocks in the fens, strangely, but it's up on the hummocks. And there's a bunch of the roundleaf sundews right there, but not here in the acid
Yeah.
bog that I've found.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And I want to point out a poison plant,
Okay.
that small tree right
Oh,
over
right
here.
I see it.
Don't touch it.
That one.
Right here, close.
Yeah.
This right there.
Yeah, this one right there, the flowers.
That's right, with the flowers, coming out. That's poison sumac. It mostly loves fens, as I mentioned earlier, but there are a few here in the bog. It gives you a rash like poison ivy if you
Right.
do get some of the juice on.
Just if you touch it. Right.
Yeah, just if you touch it,
I'm
right?
sure if you eat it too.
And in one of the fens that we won't get to today, there's fantastic growth of poison sumacs, larger trees, and Don Leopold, a well-known botanist from SUNY ESF in Syracuse, in his visits here, he's one of our heroes of protecting this place. Said he's never seen a healthier growth of poison sumac. So we're really proud of our poison sumac.
I'm sure they serve some type of purpose. I mean, they probably grow by rhizomes too, right? So they probably spread.
Probably
Yeah.
do. Probably do.
We have some red maples
So
here and some young white pines.
Here, as you get out towards the open area of the acid bog,
Yeah.
the trees don't do so well.
Yeah.
So they try, but they die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the skunk cabbage get pretty smelly in a certain time earlier in the season?
I don't really notice the smell until I pick a leaf and crush it in my fingers.
Yeah.
But probably people with better senses than I probably notice it. So just a carpet of green sphagnum in some places. Why some places are more open. But this is sort of the eastern end of the mineral poor swamp, and with the bog sort of in the middle. But all part of this big kettle that was 30-some feet deep down to the gravel bottom.
It's so exciting that you were able to get to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause we were enamored as students. We were just like, oh, keep on going. You have that, you have that desire.
Yeah, our house is up there. You can see the backside of
Oh
the
yeah,
garage.
you can. I didn't get my bearings until you just said that.
This, I think, is a Kame. We've been talking about Eskers and Kettle. Well, the Kames are sort of these, as you know, kind of irregular rounded hills of various shapes and sizes that were left behind by the glacier, gravel, rocks, and sand dumped off of the glacier as it was melting, leaving behind these hills. The Eskers being formed in tunnels. So we have Kames of strange sizes and shapes, but a convenient place for our house on top here.
Yeah. Well, I think when we were also looking for land in the area, we wanted to be a little bit more elevated, and it's thankful to the glaciers, how it actually carved out certain valleys and everything. Otherwise, everything, could be flat. And, so it's neat to see how the topography has shaped where we choose to live.
Yep. Yeah. It is true.
And where the plants and everything choose to live too.
And here close by, in the Finger Lakes region, of course, the lakes were carved out much deeper by the glacier as it was pushing south. And then when it was gone, the steep hillsides, water flowing over the last 10, 11, 12,000 years caused the formation of the gorges, wonderful gorges that we have that were formed since the glacier left. And of course, here at Malloryville, we have the product of the running water off the glacier itself, forming Kames and Eskers and leaving behind blocks of ice that became Kettles. So interesting diversity of terrain we have right here in our Finger Lakes region.
Absolutely. And I know why you fell in love with this area. I mean, it's so special, to have this in your backyard, and also to be open to the public now, which is just phenomenal to see so many different types of marshy areas, boggy areas, fens, little wetlands, just within a small section, even though it's hundreds of acres. But just within our little walk, we saw plenty and a diversity of things. And every season you come out here, you're going to see something new blooming.
People enjoy coming back and through the seasons. Even in the winter, it's fun to walk the trails. And it's always different. And, I'm so happy that people are enjoying this place, coming here, learning about it, learning new things, taking that knowledge with them, hopefully working to protect other places. And we could have said to the Nature Conservancy, let's protect this but not invite the public. Let's not put in any boardwalks and just, keep it for its own sake, which was great. It would be great, as they do in some places. But here we thought we could open it up with proper boardwalks to keep people on the boardwalks, and protect the plants. But let people come and enjoy it. And so my wife and I are really happy we were able to do that. And thankful to Nature Conservancy and, of course, the Finger Lakes Land Trust doing similar things with lots of properties all around us. And I was one of the founders of the Finger Lakes Land Trust. And I'm so happy that they have gone on to be such a force for protection of wild places in our region. So it's just a great thing. And I, as a teacher, college biology teacher, I want people to learn about these places and have the opportunity to appreciate them. So here we are.
Well, thank you so much. You taught us so much in this little walk of ours, and it was just phenomenal. Thank you so much for your passion and your hard work in actually being and contributing to this. This story was brought to you by visitithaca.com. Next time you're planning your trip to the Finger Lakes region, head over to their site so you can discover your next experiences, including seeing some of the 150 plus waterfalls, over 230 miles of trails, and a plethora of agri-culinary experiences that are totally unique to this area. You can also visit some of the unique preserves like the O.D. von Engeln Preserve and Malloryville Bog. And a short distance away from there is the Nature Preserve in Freeville, which stretches along a mile of the beautiful Fall Creek and is particularly good for bird watching. You can find more ideas over at visitithaca.com.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm gonna give you your umbrella back.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Luckily,
yeah?
it didn't rain on us.
Oh, good.
So,
Well, see, you had the umbrella.
but I had
magic
something
umbrella.
there. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, glad you could use it.